Has someone you love started showing subtle but concerning changes over the past year? Many people believe that death in old age happens suddenly. But the truth is, the body often sends quiet warnings months, even a year, before life reaches its final stage. The problem is most of us miss these signs because they seem small at first. It's only later, looking back, that families realize the clues were there all along. But by then, it's too late to prepare, too late to make those final memories count. In this video, we'll talk about 5 key signs that often appear a year before an elderly person passes away. Some of them might be changes you've noticed, but brushed off as part of aging, while others may seem minor, but actually signal the body's gradual decline. Recognizing these signs early gives you the chance to provide better care. Cherish meaningful moments, and most importantly, ensure that your loved one's final stage of life is filled with comfort, dignity, and peace. Stay with us until the end, because these 5 signs can help you prepare emotionally and practically for what's ahead. When you understand what's happening, you won't be caught off guard. You'll be able to make the most of the time you have left with your loved ones. And one of the first and often quietest signals that the body may be preparing for life's final transition is unintentional weight loss. It doesn't shout. It doesn't come with alarms. It whispers. You might notice a favorite pair of pants suddenly slipping at the waist, or a belt notch being tightened without much thought. At first it seems harmless, maybe even welcomed. You're losing a little weight, someone might say with a smile. But when the weight keeps falling off without trying, when meals start going unfinished and snacks sit untouched, it's time to look deeper. This kind of weight loss isn't just about eating less. It's often the result of profound internal changes. As the body begins to slow down, its ability to absorb nutrients diminishes. Digestion becomes less efficient. Muscles which once held firm through years of movement begin to quietly shrink, a process called sarcopenia, which naturally happens with age but accelerates significantly in the final stages of life. According to research from the Journal of Cachexia, Sarcopenia and Muscle, up to 80% of patients with advanced chronic illnesses experience noticeable muscle wasting in their final year, especially when diseases like cancer or heart failure are present. The appetite too fades. Food no longer tastes quite the same. The joy of a hearty breakfast or a favorite casserole is replaced with indifference or even discomfort. Eating becomes more of a task than a pleasure. This isn't just due to age or mood. It's a physiological response to a body beginning to shift focus. In the late stages of life, the body prioritizes preservation, not fuel. Energy is conserved, digestion is slowed, and hunger signals diminish. Even the act of chewing and swallowing can become tiring. The body, in its wisdom, is turning inward. And still, it's so easy to miss. Families often respond with love, offering calorie-rich shakes, baking beloved comfort foods, encouraging more bites, more spoonfuls, more, just a little. It comes from the heart. But when the body is beginning to release its grip on this world, it may simply not want or be able to hold on to food anymore. Forcing large meals, even with the best intentions, can sometimes cause discomfort or distress. At this point, the issue is rarely about food. It's about what the body is trying to tell us. Let me tell you about Marvin, a 74-year-old retired teacher with a booming laugh and a lifelong love for blueberry pancakes. His wife noticed first he stopped finishing his morning plate. Too sweet, he'd say, even though it had been his favorite for decades. Then his slacks began to droop. A month later, he needed suspenders just to keep them on. Marvin wasn't on a diet, he wasn't exercising more, but he was eating less, moving slower, and beginning to nap more during the day. Eventually, his doctor diagnosed him with early-stage heart failure, a condition that had been silently chipping away at his energy and appetite. By the time Marvin began hospice care months later, he'd lost nearly 20 pounds without ever trying. His wife shared, "I kept offering him more food, thinking it would help. But I realized later he didn't need more calories. He needed more comfort." Stories like Marvin's are far more common than we think. The National Institutes of Health notes that weight loss of more than 5% of one's body weight over a 6 to 12-month period without intentional dieting is a strong red flag in older adults. It's often a sign of serious underlying illness, particularly when paired with fatigue, weakness, or changes in mood. And while some weight loss in later life can be normal, the speed, amount, and cause matter. When that loss happens quietly without explanation and continues despite extra food or encouragement, it often means the body is preparing for something deeper than we can see. So what can we do? We shift our focus from quantity to comfort. Instead of large meals, offer small, soft, familiar foods, things that are easy to chew and soothing to taste. Smooth soups, warm applesauce, a spoonful of pudding. Encourage sips of water or a tea throughout the day. Sit beside them during meals, not to push, but to be present. The nourishment at this stage often isn't just physical, it's emotional. It's the warmth of your presence, not the calories that often brings the most peace. And most importantly, we listen. We listen not just to their words, but to their bodies. A smaller appetite, a slimmer frame, a half-eaten plate, these are not failures. They are signals. And when we choose to hear them, we give our loved ones the space to transition with dignity. We stop trying to fix and start trying to feel. We don't have to understand everything that's happening, but we can honor it. Because in the end, what matters most isn't how much they eat. It's that they feel seen, held, loved, and that every bite, every moment is offered with gentleness and grace. Another quiet but deeply revealing sign that a person may be approaching the final stage of life is persistent, profound fatigue. This isn't the ordinary tiredness that fades after a nap or a good night's sleep. It's a deep, consuming exhaustion that settles into the bones and never quite lifts, no matter how much rest they get. You might begin to notice your loved one sleeping later in the morning, dozing off during the day, or struggling to keep their eyes open through conversations. Tasks that once seemed simple, buttoning a shirt, walking to the kitchen, or brushing their hair, now feel monumental. Even just sitting up in bed can look like a climb. This kind of fatigue is not laziness, and it's not depression. It is the body's quiet way of conserving what little energy remains. When the heart weakens and doesn't pump as strongly, when the lungs don't deliver as much oxygen, when muscles aren't fueled properly, every movement becomes a burden. And the body in its wisdom begins to shift gears. It turns inward. It chooses preservation over productivity. It redirects energy away from activity and towards simply sustaining the essentials. This change also affects the brain. Many people in this stage begin to speak less or avoid social interactions altogether. Not because they don't care, but because engaging becomes too tiring. Holding a conversation, listening closely, or even smiling for long takes more energy than they have to give. It's not that they've lost interest, it's that their reserves are running low. This can be one of the most painful changes for families to witness. You remember them as energetic, funny, always on the move. Now they barely lift their head, and it's tempting to encourage them to get up and move around, to push through it, to try just a little harder. After all, movement keeps people strong, doesn't it? But at this point, pushing can backfire. The more pressure they feel, the more exhausted they become. The more exhausted they are, the more they withdraw. It becomes a painful cycle. Fatigue leads to inactivity, which leads to more fatigue. And what they need most isn't motivation. It's permission to rest, to just be. I remember Angela, a 79-year-old grandmother who used to walk to the local park every morning, feed the birds, and chat with her neighbors. One spring, she began sleeping past sunrise. Her walks became shorter. Then she stopped going altogether. When her daughter asked why, Angela simply said, "It just feels like everything is heavy." Her doctor later explained that her heart was entering a state of decline and her body was choosing to slow down. Angela wasn't giving up. She was letting go. And in her final months, what brought her the most peace wasn't another round of therapy or a new energy supplement. It was a quiet home, soft blankets, and the gentle sound of her granddaughter's voice reading aloud beside her. Scientific studies support what families like Angela's have seen firsthand. According to the American Academy of Family Physicians, fatigue is one of the most common and distressing symptoms reported by patients in palliative care, often ranking even higher than pain. It's not simply being tired, it's a complex interaction of declining organ function, medication effects, emotional burden, and metabolic changes. And most importantly, it does not resolve with sleep. It is persistent. And it demands compassion. So, what should you do if you notice this kind of fatigue in someone you love? The answer is to slow down with them. Create an environment that invites rest, not performance. Don't push conversation, just be nearby. Offer a warm drink or hold their hand. Make sure they're comfortable pillows, adjusted, soft clothing, natural light. Little things offered with love can mean the world. Fatigue at the end of life isn't something to be cured. It's something to be honored. It is the body's way of preparing. A gradual softening of activity, a dimming of motion, a turning inward. Just like a flower closing at dusk. And just like that flower, there is still beauty in the quiet. There is grace in the stillness. And there is dignity in choosing peace over push. This is the time to offer your loved one the freedom to rest without guilt, the space to breathe without pressure, and the assurance that they are loved, not for what they can do, but simply for who they are. Because in the end, our presence means more than our pep talks. Our stillness speaks louder than our instructions, and our quiet understanding becomes the most precious gift we can give. A third sign that often appears gently yet profoundly in the final chapter of life is cognitive confusion and emotional withdrawal. This isn't simply a matter of normal forgetfulness or a few scattered memory lapses. It's something deeper, quieter, and more disorienting. You might notice your loved one pausing in the middle of a sentence, repeating a question they just asked, or looking around the room with uncertainty in a place that should feel familiar. They may call you by the wrong name, forget what day it is, or become visibly distressed when their surroundings don't make sense. At first, these moments may seem isolated or explainable. Maybe they didn't sleep well, maybe their blood sugar was low, maybe they're just distracted. But as these episodes begin to grow in frequency and intensity, it's important to understand what may truly be happening. As the body begins to slow, so does the brain. Like every other organ, the brain requires oxygen and nutrients to function well. But in the later stages of life, blood flow to the brain can diminish. Oxygen levels may dip, energy reserves shrink, and just like muscles begin to weaken, mental clarity does too. This change doesn't always happen suddenly. In fact, it often unfolds in a soft, gradual way, like fog creeping over a familiar landscape. One moment they're present and engaged, and the next they seem to drift somewhere far away. They may stare into space, speak less, or disengage from conversation altogether. And it's not only confusion that shows up, it's also emotional distance. The person who once lit up the room with stories and laughter may now sit quietly, eyes lowered, speaking only when spoken to. This withdrawal isn't a sign that they no longer care. It's not rejection, it's exhaustion. Engaging socially requires mental energy, remembering names, following conversations, responding with expression, and as that energy fades, so does the desire to interact. For families, this can be heartbreaking. Watching someone you love fade mentally while they are still physically here can feel like losing them twice, once in spirit and later in body. You may want to correct them, remind them, or bring them back to the present. But often, these efforts, though, well-meaning, add stress to an already overwhelmed mind. What they need isn't to be pulled back, it's to be met where they are. I think of Helen, a 76-year-old woman who once told the most vibrant stories about growing up in Georgia, how she used to sneak peaches off the neighbor's tree, or how her father taught her to dance in the living room. But one day, she called her daughter by her sister's name. Then she began asking if it was Sunday, even when it was Wednesday. One afternoon, she sat in her favorite chair, looked around the living room she'd lived in for 40 years, and whispered, "This isn't my house." Her family was devastated, but when they stopped correcting her and started simply sitting beside her, holding her hand, playing her favorite songs, speaking softly, something shifted. Helen didn't come back in the way they hoped, but she relaxed. She smiled more. She was no longer frightened, and that made all the difference. Medically, these changes are well documented. According to the National Institute on Aging, cognitive changes are common in the final months of life, especially in patients with chronic conditions like heart failure, advanced kidney disease, or neurological disorders. And emotional withdrawal marked by reduced speech, disinterest in surroundings, and increased sleep is often part of what professionals call pre-active dying, a stage where the body begins to disengage from the world around it. But here's the deeper truth: even when the mind grows dim, the heart still feels. Your loved one may not remember your name, but they will recognize your kindness. They may not respond to your words, but they will feel your presence. They may not know where they are, but they will know they are safe. And that emotional imprint, the warmth of a hand held, the comfort of a familiar song, the rhythm of a calming voice, can mean more than any correction or explanation ever could. So what can you do in this stage? Focus on creating a space of safety. Keep the environment calm and familiar. Use soft lighting, familiar scents, gentle touch. Play music that has meaning. Sit with them even in silence. Speak simply and slowly, not to test their memory, but to offer your company. Let go of expectations. Release the need for clarity or conversation. And instead, lean into connection, because in these final phases, presence becomes more powerful than words. The world they once knew may be fading, but your love is still a lighthouse. It guides. It soothes. It reminds them without needing to say a word that they are not alone. And in a time when so much is uncertain, that one truth can be a lasting comfort. A fourth sign that tends to appear gradually, yet speaks volumes about the body's deeper condition, is a growing vulnerability to infections and a noticeable slowdown in the healing process. These changes may not be dramatic at first. A minor cold lingers longer than usual. A small scrape on the leg stays red and irritated for weeks. What once healed quickly now drags on with no clear resolution. At a glance, it might seem like a coincidence. It's just a tough flu season. Or maybe their immune system is just a little down. But over time, patterns begin to form. Recurring urinary tract infections, frequent respiratory issues, persistent skin problems, or unexplained low-grade fevers become more common. And what's even more important is that the body doesn't always react the way we expect. Older adults, especially those nearing life's final stage, might not develop a high fever or complain of intense pain. Instead, the first signs of infection may show up as confusion, fatigue, or a sudden dip in appetite. The body is still fighting, but it's fighting differently and often less effectively. The immune system, much like every other system in the body, gradually becomes less responsive as energy is rerouted to support only the most vital functions. Blood circulation slows, meaning fewer white blood cells are delivered to wounds or sites of infection. Nutrients are no longer distributed efficiently to fuel recovery. The skin becomes thinner, more fragile, and susceptible to breakdown. And deep inside the body knows that it no longer has the same capacity to heal. Families may respond by doing what they've always done, calling the doctor, requesting antibiotics, going through rounds of tests, and for a while those interventions may still work. But when infections begin to recur, and when healing becomes slower and more painful with each episode, it's important to recognize what the body might be telling us, that it is growing tired, that its systems are winding down, and that perhaps the goal is no longer to cure, but to comfort. I remember Charles, an 81-year-old man who'd always been strong and steady, a former mechanic with thick hands and a steady voice. One winter, he developed a chest cold that just wouldn't go away. Weeks passed and he was still coughing. Antibiotics helped for a few days, then symptoms returned. The next month, he had a urinary tract infection, then a pressure sore on his ankle from his slippers rubbing too tight. Every small issue began to feel like a battle. His daughter, frustrated and fearful, kept pushing for more tests, more referrals. But eventually, the hospice nurse gently told her his body is doing what it's supposed to do. It's letting go. That moment, though painful, marked a turning point. They shifted focus from fixing every problem to easing every discomfort. And in doing so, Charles was able to spend his last weeks in peace, surrounded by care that met him where he was rather than where others wished he could return. From a medical standpoint, these changes are well supported by research. Studies published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society show that older adults in their final year of life often experience increased hospitalizations due to infections, especially respiratory and urinary tract infections. Moreover, their immune responses, measured through markers like white blood cell counts and inflammatory indicators, tend to weaken, leading to prolonged illness and reduced recovery. It's not that the body isn't trying, it's that it no longer has the same tools to succeed. So what can families do in the face of this decline? First, observe with care and curiosity. If someone you love is taking longer to heal, getting sick more often, or seems more fragile than before, consider not just the symptom, but the story behind it. Rather than asking, "How do we fix this?" you might ask, "What would bring them the most ease right now?" Gentle hygiene routines, like softly cleansing the skin, keeping linens fresh, offering frequent sips of water can do more than another prescription. A warm compress on aching joints, a soothing lotion applied with care, a quiet afternoon nap without interruption. These small gestures are often underestimated, but they carry immense healing power, not because they cure, but because they comfort. This is a season where less may truly be more, some fewer invasive procedures, fewer stressful appointments, and more time simply being together. That shift in focus from intervention to intention can change not just how a person feels, but how they are remembered. Because at this point in the journey, what often matters most isn't how aggressively we fight, but how fully we love. And love shows itself in many forms, in soft blankets, in clean hands, in gentle voices, in the choice to sit quietly through the night. As the body grows more vulnerable to the outside world, our job is to become its shelter, to offer a place where it doesn't have to battle anymore, where it is allowed to rest, to be, to let go slowly, gently, and without fear. And in doing so, we give a gift far greater than medicine. We give the gift of peace. The fifth and often most visible sign that someone may be nearing the final stage of life is a noticeable change in breathing patterns and circulation. Unlike the other signs, which often unfold quietly or gradually, this one can feel more immediate, more urgent, and at times more frightening for families to witness. You might observe that your loved one's breathing becomes shallower, slower, or uneven. There may be moments of rapid, almost panicked breaths, followed by long, silent pauses, a pattern known medically as Cheney-Stokes respiration. At first, it might only happen during sleep, and you may not even notice it unless you're close by. But over time, it becomes more frequent, more pronounced, and harder to ignore. These shifts aren't just random, they are the result of the brain's respiratory center receiving fewer and more irregular signals from the body. As organs begin to shut down and oxygen levels fall, the normal rhythm of breathing changes. The lungs no longer expand as fully. The diaphragm weakens. The body begins to require less oxygen, and it adapts by altering the very pattern of breath. In addition to changes in breathing, you may also notice physical signs in the extremities. Hands and feet may feel cold to the touch. Fingertips, lips, and the tip of the nose may take on a bluish, purplish, or mottled appearance. These are signs that circulation is slowing down. Another way, the body is focusing its energy inward. Blood is redirected away from the arms and legs to nourish the heart, brain, and other vital organs for as long as possible. This change isn't a failure, it's a sign of the body's natural intelligence choosing where to place its remaining strength. Another common observation is an increase in breathlessness with even the slightest activity. Something as simple as turning in bed, sitting upright, or speaking a full sentence may leave your loved one winded or gasping. They may begin to breathe through their mouth more often or instinctively prop themselves up with pillows in an attempt to ease the discomfort. Some may develop a persistent wet cough or produce gurgling sounds in the throat due to fluid buildup in the lungs, which can be mistaken for a simple cold or congestion. These sounds are sometimes called the death rattle, a term that may sound harsh, but in truth it simply reflects the body's inability to clear secretions in the final days or hours of life. And while it can be distressing to hear, it is often not painful for the person experiencing it. I remember Carlos, a 70-year-old grandfather who had always slept soundly in his bed until one night he asked to sleep on the couch propped up on pillows. At first, his family thought he had a cold or maybe allergies. But then they noticed the bluish tone around his lips, the shallow rise and fall of his chest, and how easily he tired from simply walking across the room. What they were seeing weren't just random symptoms, they were signs of his lungs and heart beginning to slow down. Once his care team explained what was happening, the family stopped trying to treat the cough or adjust his pillows every few minutes. Instead, they focused on making him feel calm, supported, and safe in the space he chose. Medically, these changes are well documented. According to the Hospice and Palliative Nurses Association, changes in respiratory patterns and circulation are among the most reliable indicators that death is near, often appearing in the final days or even hours. These symptoms are not failures of care, they are physical expressions of a body completing its natural course. And while they may look and sound dramatic, they are often more distressing to watch than they are to experience. The person may not be fully aware of them. They may already be in a semi-conscious or unresponsive state, with their brain naturally releasing endorphins and calming chemicals to ease discomfort. For families and caregivers, witnessing these changes can stir fear, panic, and helplessness. The instinct is to intervene, to call for help, to increase oxygen, to offer water to fix it. And while some medical support like oxygen or medication may help ease specific discomforts, the real focus at this stage begins to shift. The goal is no longer to reverse what's happening, it's to accompany it, to offer a peaceful environment, to soften the lighting, to lower the noise, to hold a hand without needing to speak. This is when the room becomes a sanctuary. The breath, though labored, is sacred. The silence between breaths becomes a language of its own, and the presence of loved ones is more powerful than any machine. So what can you do if you notice these signs? Stay close. Stay calm. Keep the environment quiet and dimly lit. Offer soft music, gentle reassurance, or simply your quiet companionship. Avoid overwhelming stimulation. If medical support is available, consult with hospice or palliative care providers about ways to ease breathing, such as low-dose medications or adjusting positioning. But most importantly, let your presence be the medicine. These final signs are not just biological markers, they are the body's way of saying goodbye. And while you may not be able to stop the process, you can shape the experience. You can turn fear into peace, panic into presence, and uncertainty into connection. In those final moments, what matters most is not that we do something, but that we are something, a source of comfort, a steady hand, a witness to a sacred transition. Because when breath becomes fragile, love becomes the strongest force in the room. As we come to the end of this gentle journey together, take a quiet moment to reflect on the 5 signs we've explored: unexplained weight loss, deep and lasting fatigue, mental confusion or emotional withdrawal, frequent infections with slowed healing, and changes in breathing and circulation. These signs don't always arrive loudly or all at once. Often they come in whispers: a skipped meal, a longer nap, a distant gaze, a bruise that lingers, a breath that falters. And while they can be difficult to witness, they are not meant to scare us. They are the body's way of speaking, of preparing, of letting go with dignity. For those of us who love someone walking this path, the instinct to fix, to push, to fight is so natural. But sometimes the greatest act of love is not doing more, it's listening more. It's choosing comfort over correction, presence over pressure, peace over panic. This season is not about giving up, it's about showing up. It's about holding hands a little longer, sitting in silence when words fall short, and saying the things that truly matter. I'm here, I love you. Thank you. Understanding these signs won't take away the sorrow, but it can take away the fear. It can help you respond not with panic, but with peace. And in that sacred space, you will find something unexpected: clarity, connection, and the quiet beauty of being fully present. If this video has touched your heart or helped you in any way, please consider liking it, sharing it with someone who may need comfort right now, and subscribing to our channel for more gentle guidance like this. And if you feel led, share a memory or a thought in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next video.